We're standing in back of the Brooklyn Daily Eagle building, or what was once the Brooklyn Daily Eagle building, where Walt Whitman served as editor in the late 1840s until he was fired. Fired either for beginning to express abolitionist views that were too controversial for the owners of the paper, or fired simply for taking overly long walks at lunch. The Brooklyn Daily Eagle building is really the place to begin to describe the career of Walt Whitman. Not that that career hadn't begun earlier. If we were to walk back 3 or 4 blocks, we would eventually reach the site of that small print shop where Whitman eventually would set by hand himself the type for the first Leaves of Grass. Set it in a local print shop, one he knew well from his having come of age in Brooklyn. He was born on Long Island near the ocean, and some of his most beautiful and operatic poems describe what it was like to be a boy growing up by the sea, coming into maturation, poetic as well as the maturation into young manhood by the sea. But by his teens, Whitman lived in New York, came here with his father and brothers and sisters, really following what was a building boom in Brooklyn, a boom that followed upon the establishment of the first steam ferry service in Brooklyn. So behind us are some of the stateliest and most beautiful blocks in Brooklyn, blocks Walt Whitman's father, and in fact sometimes Whitman himself, helped to erect. In front of us, just a block or so in front of us, is the East River, and a block or so to my right, the warehouses, the tobacco warehouses, the storage houses for cotton and sugar and fish and other commodities that began to grow up along this bank of the East River. Over in the Fulton Ferry warehouse district, wealth was being accumulated, and so behind me, that wealth was building for itself great houses. This building, the Brooklyn Eagle Warehouse, which is now naturally exclusive and very expensive condos, was in the 1890s built as a warehouse, but built around the structure of the Brooklyn Daily Eagle printing offices. And you can see, if you look above, the original roof line of the Brooklyn Daily Eagle offices where Whitman would have worked. Whitman began not as a writer, but as a printer, right? A person with inky fingers who worked in a manual trade. And in that, he was not unusual. We have other famous writer-printers, the most famous of them in America, probably Benjamin Franklin, right? Who made that jump from setting type, from the technological job of working in print to being a writer. But it's an important distinction to observe. We want to make a distinction between that kind of writer and the kind of writer Walter Whitman was. Walter Whitman, who began as a printer in an industry where he was in and out of lots of jobs. He worked for many, many of the papers of the day, for the New York Mirror, for the Aurora, for the Brooklyn Daily Eagle, for various Long Island papers, sometimes hired for intellectual direction. He might give the paper, sometimes simply as an extra pair of hands.